my maker, my light and my salvation. You are my refuge, my heart will not fear. Though the foes surround me on every hand, they will stumble and fall, while in grace I stand. In my day of trouble you hide me, set me above, to sing the song of love. One thing I will ask of you, yes, I will pray, to dwell in your house, O Lord, and every day to gaze upon your lovely face, to rest in the Father's embrace. First verse again, we'll do the first verse again. You are my maker, thank you, my light and my salvation. You are my refuge, my heart will not fear. Though my foes surround me on every hand, they will stumble and fall, while in grace I stand. In my day of trouble you hide me, set me above, to sing the song of love. One thing I will ask of you, yes, I will pray, to dwell in your house, Lord, every day to gaze upon your lovely face, to rest in the Father's embrace. Second verse. Teach me your way, Lord. Make straight the path before me. Do not forsake me. My hope is in you. As I walk through life, I am confident I will see your goodness with every step, and my heart distracts me to seek you in all that I do. So I will wait for you. One thing I will ask of you, yes, I will pray, to dwell in your house, Lord, every day to gaze upon your lovely face, and to rest in the Father's embrace. One thing I will ask of you, yes, I will pray, to dwell in your house, Lord, every day to gaze upon your lovely face, and to rest in the Father's embrace. Abba, Father, we are here in your house today because we love you, and we want to serve you beyond anything else that is happening around us. We want to serve you, to be known for those who follow after you. And I thank you that in this day, so much trouble, so much heartache, so much difficulty, so much happening in the world around us, that you are still God, and that we can trust you, and we can stand with you, and you will continue to stand with us. Let's do Mantra. It is the beginning of synagogue service usually to say certain prayers. The sign-up list for the readings is still on the back table, I believe. Okay. Yeah, bless the Lord, O my soul. Sorry. 10,000 reasons.
Sing like never before.
is great, and your heart is kind. For all your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I'll worship Your holy name. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come. Still my soul will sing Your praise unending. 10,000 years and forevermore. Bless the Lord, my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I'll worship Your holy name. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I'll worship Your holy name. Yes, I'll worship Your holy name. Oh, I'll worship Your holy name. Yes, I'll worship Your holy name. Should we do Your great name? Yeah. You want to see that one?
Your great.
Huh? Lost or saved? Yes. Your great name, lost or saved. And then we'll go to the Shema.
Turn them upside down over and over.
Find it.
It's got 2 or 3.
Click this one.
Boots are too heavy.
Oh, too heavy.
Too heavy to dance.
Yeah.
We don't believe in observational worship here. We believe in participation worship. So there's all kinds of things to use. Feel free to say no, but please join us if you can. If you're at all comfortable with it, please do it. Just like in this class, we stand, we sit, we dance, we sing, we clap our hands, we do all kinds of crazy things sometimes, right?
Yes.
Yes, I do. All kinds of things. Lost or saved, find your way and sung Your great name. All condemned, feel no shame and sung Your great name. We have programs. If you don't have one, let us know. We'll grab you one. Inside is the Shema. Joy is going to come and lead us in the Shema. She'll do the Hebrew, then we'll follow in English. Everyone is welcome to join us with that. They're on the back table if you don't have one, I think. Yes. They look like this on the front. And the prayers are inside. It is the one time that we do ask that everyone who is at all possible to stand in honor of our King. We'll do the shofar as well.
Did you see it was
Janie will blow the shofar for us this morning. The shofar is a call to attention, a call to worship, a declaration of the King of Kings. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kirashani b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu l'shmoa kol shofar. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with your commandments and has instructed us to hear the voice of the shofar. Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom, forever and ever. walk along the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be for frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself.
And you shall love your neighbor as
Baruch atah Adonai Elokeinu melech haolam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehiot legoyim v'natan lanu Yeshua HaMashiach or Haolam. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctified us with commandments and has commanded us to be a light unto the nations, and has given us Yeshua the Messiah, the light of the world. And Abba Father, as Yeshua is the light of the world, so he has placed us in this world to be lights for him. He has told us a city on a hill. He has told us to be a city on a hill. We don't shine our light and cover it up. We shine our light in the darkness. And what is that light? Yeshua, you told us that you would know we were your followers by our love. By our love. Not by right and wrong doctrines or right and wrong this or right and wrong that or anything like that. You said, they will know you are my followers when you love one another. So Abba, Father God, I ask that we will learn how to love each other in truth and in wisdom. And Father, that we would learn how to love our neighbors, those who are next door to us, those who are down the street from us, those who disagree with us, those who we disagree with. Father, I ask that as a people of the Most High God, we need to become known as those who show love, those who come with grace as well as truth. Lord, that's what you've been showing me for the last couple of years. And Father, I ask that as we continue our service today, Lord, that you will show yourself. Father, that we will be changed by your presence. That we will not be the same when we leave as when we came in. That we will not be the same when we hear your word and go out. Because that's like a man who looks in the mirror and straight away forgets what he looks like. Father, let us learn to be changed by your word, by your truth, and mostly by your love. In the name of Yeshua, help us to be the lights. Amen.
Bring your people to Yeshua. May they see their Messiah, the one whom they've pierced, the one whom they've pierced. May they see him, may they mourn. Take my heart, heal my soul, speak the mind in Messiah we know. Take me to your sanctuary, breathe on me, breathe on me, breathe on me.
Today we begin a reading. Is that picking me up okay? We tried to do a sound check earlier this week and things, it doesn't ever work the same when we actually get here on Shabbat. It never does. I don't understand that, but that's okay. I don't have to, right? Our reading today, we begin in the book in English called Exodus. In the Hebrew, it's called Shemot. Shemot is, well, it's Shemot or Shemot. It depends on whose pronunciation you're following. One of the fun things about Hebrew is the vowel markers aren't there in Torah. So, depending on if you're Ashkenazi, if you're Sephardic, if you're coming into it from another perspective, the modern pronunciation is usually Shemot. It is the title for the second book from the scroll in the Torah. We have a scroll back there. We don't read out of it mostly because we don't understand Hebrew that well. So let's stick to what we know, right? The word Shemot means names, and it comes from the very first line in the Torah, in this book, and it begins with Shemot, because you see in Hebrew the word order is different. So in English, these are the names, but in Hebrew it would say names are these of. So Shemot means names. We get the word Exodus from the Septuagint, actually, which is a Greek translation of the Bible. And the Exodus is kind of a derivation or whatever, I can't pronounce words today. It's abbreviated from a title that basically means departure. And Exodus means to depart. It tells us a story of the children of Israel as they're enslaved in Egypt and their miraculous redemption through the Redeemer called Moses. It gives the story of the Torah being given at Mount Sinai. It gives the story of the construction of the golden calf immediately afterwards. And it gives the story of the construction of the tabernacle. This week we read the first part, where the children of Israel are in slavery. It begins by just telling us who they are, and then it tells us what has happened. But most important, it reminds us God does not forget his promises. Even though it seemed delayed, God does not forget his promises. Our first reading, and we're going to just read the whole portion today, because there wasn't anything in it that I felt I could cut out without ruining part of the story. So as you listen to it being read from the pulpit, listen for the concept of God not forgetting promises. Listen for where it shows us that. Listen for a picture of who God is as our Redeemer. Chris is going to read our first part out of Exodus. She's going to read Exodus chapter 1, and pretty much these are broken down into the full chapter. So Exodus chapter 1. If you don't have a Bible, there's some on the back tables if you want to read along with us. Exodus chapter 1.
Now these are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob. They came each one with his household: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. All the persons who came from the loins of Jacob were 70 in number, but Joseph was already in Egypt. Joseph died, and all his brothers and all that generation. But the sons of Israel were faithful and increased greatly and multiplied and became exceedingly mighty, so that the land was filled with them. Now a new king arose over Egypt, who did not know Joseph. He said to his people, "Behold, the people of the sons of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal wisely with them, or else they will multiply, and in the event of war they will also join themselves to those who hate us, and fight against us, and depart from the land." So they appointed taskmasters over them to afflict them with hard labor. And they built for Pharaoh storage cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread out, so that they were in dread of the sons of Israel. The Egyptians compelled the sons of Israel to labor rigorously, and they made their lives bitter with hard labor in mortar and bricks, and all kinds of labor in the field, all the labors which they rigorously imposed on them. But the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah, and the other was named Puah. And he said, "When you are helping the Hebrew women to give birth, and see them upon the birth stool, if it is a son, then you shall put him to death. But if it is a daughter, then she shall live." But the midwives feared God, and did not do as the king of Egypt had commanded them, but let the boys live. So the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said to them, "Why have you done this thing and let the boys live?" The midwives said to Pharaoh, "Because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are rigorous, and give birth before the midwives can get to them." So God was good to the midwives, and the people multiplied and became very mighty. Because the midwives feared God, he established households for them. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, "Every son who is born you are to cast into the Nile, and every daughter you are to keep alive."
Janie is going to come and read the second part. What happens next? Exodus chapter 2.
Now a man from the house of Levi went and married a daughter of Levi. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was beautiful, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got him a wicker basket and covered it over with tar and pitch. Then she put the child into it and set it among the reeds by the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to find out what would happen to him. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the Nile, with her maidens walking alongside the Nile. And she saw the basket among the reeds and sent her maid, and she brought it to her. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the boy was crying. And she had pity on him and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?" Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go ahead." So the girl went and called the child's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. The child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she named him Moses, and said, because I drew him out of the water. Now it came about in those days, when Moses had grown up, that he went out to his brethren and looked on their hard labors. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren. So he looked this way and that, and when he saw there was no one around, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. He went out the next day, and behold, 2 Hebrews were fighting with each other, and he said to the offender, why are you striking your companion? But he said, who made you a prince or a judge over us? Are you intending to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? Then Moses was afraid and said, surely the matter has become known. When Pharaoh heard of this matter, he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the presence of Pharaoh and settled in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. Then the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. When they came to Reuel, their father, he said, why have you come back so soon today? So they said, an Egyptian delivered us from the hands of the shepherds, and what is more, he even drew the water for us and watered the flock. He said to his daughters, where is he then? Why is it that you have left the man behind? Invite him to have something to eat. Moses was willing to dwell with the man, and he gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses. Then she gave birth to a son, and he named him Gershom, for he said, I have been a sojourner in a foreign land. Now it came about in the course of those many days that the king of Egypt died, and the sons of Israel sighed because of the bondage, and they cried out, and their cry for help because of their bondage rose up to God. So God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God saw the sons of Israel and took notice of them.
Joy is going to read the next part of the story, chapter 3.
Now Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. So Moses said, I must turn aside now and see this marvelous sight, why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He also said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and I have given heed to their cry because of their taskmasters, for I am aware of their sufferings. So I have come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from that land to a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanite, and the Hittite, and the Amorite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Now, behold, the cry of the sons of Israel has come to me. Furthermore, I have seen the oppression with which the Egyptians are oppressing them. Therefore, come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, Certainly I will be with you, and this shall be a sign unto you, that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God at this holy mountain.
Then Moses said to God, Behold, I am going to the sons of Israel, and I will say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you. Now they may say to me, What is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am hath sent me. God furthermore said to Moses, Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial name to all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I am indeed concerned about you, and what has been done to you in Egypt. So I said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanite, and the Hittite, and the Amorite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite, to a land flowing with milk and honey. They will pay heed to what you say, and you with the elders of Israel will come to the king of Egypt and will say to him, The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So now, please let us go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not permit you to go except under compulsion. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my miracles. What shall I do in the midst of it? And after that he will let you go. I will grant this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and it shall be that when you go, you will not go empty-handed, but every woman shall ask of her neighbor and the woman who lives in her house articles of silver and articles of gold and clothing, and you will put them on your sons and daughters. Thus you will plunder the Egyptians.
Chris, chapter 4, continuing the story.
Then Moses said, What if they will not believe me or listen to what I say? For they may say, The Lord has not appeared to you. The Lord said to him, What is that in your hand? And he said, A staff. Then he said, Throw it on the ground. So he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moses fled from it. But the Lord said to Moses, Stretch out your hand and grasp it by its tail. So he stretched out his hand and caught it. And it became a staff in his hand, that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. The Lord furthermore said to him, Now put your hand into your bosom. So he put his hand into his bosom, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous like snow. Then he said, Put your hand into your bosom again. So he put his hand into his bosom again, and when he took it out of his bosom, behold, it was restored like the rest of his flesh. If they will not believe you, or heed the witness of the first sign, they may believe the witness of the last sign. But if they will not believe even these 2 signs, or heed what you say, then you shall take some water from the Nile, and pour it on the ground, on the dry ground. And the water which you take from the Nile will become blood on the dry ground. Then Moses said to the Lord, Please, Lord, I have never been eloquent, neither recently nor in time past, nor since. You have spoken to your servant, for I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. The Lord said to him, Who has made man's mouth? Or who makes him mute or deaf, or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now then, go, and I, even I, will be with your mouth, and teach you what you are to say. But he said, Please, Lord, now send the message by whomever you will. Then the anger of the Lord burned against Moses, and he said, Is there not your brother Aaron the Levite? I know that he speaks fluently, and moreover, behold, he is coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You are to speak to him, and put the words in his mouth, and I, even I, will be with your mouth and his mouth, and I will teach you what you are to do. Moreover, he shall speak for you to the people, and he will be as a mouth for you, and you will be as God to him. You shall take in your hand this staff, with which you shall perform your signs." Then Moses departed and returned to Jethro his father-in-law, and said to him, "Please, let me go, that I may return to my brethren who are in Egypt, and see if they are still alive." And Jethro said to Moses, "Go in peace." Now the Lord said to Moses in Midian, "Go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life are dead." So Moses took his wife and his sons, and mounted them on a donkey, and returned to the land of Egypt. Moses also took the staff of God in his hand. The Lord said to Moses, "When you go back to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders which I have put in your power. But I will harden his heart, so he will not let the people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, 'Thus says the Lord, Israel is my son, my firstborn.' So I said to you, 'Let my son go, that he may serve me,' but you have refused to let him go. Behold, I will kill your son, your firstborn." Now it came about, at the lodging place on the way, that the Lord met him and sought to put him to death. Then Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and threw it at Moses' feet. And she said, "You are indeed a bridegroom of blood to me." So he let him alone. At that time he said, "You are a bridegroom of blood because of the circumcision." Now the Lord said to Aaron, "Go to meet Moses in the wilderness." So he went and met him at the mountain of God and kissed him. Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord with which he had sent him, and all the signs that he had commanded him to do. Then Moses and Aaron went and assembled all the elders of the sons of Israel. And Aaron spoke all the words which the Lord had spoken to Moses. He then performed the signs in the sight of the people. So the people believed, and when they heard that the Lord was concerned about the sons of Israel, and that he had seen their affliction, then they bowed low and worshipped.
Janie's going to come and read the last part of the story that we're reading today, chapter 5 of Exodus, through the first verse of chapter 6.
And afterward Moses and Aaron came and said to Pharaoh, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may celebrate a feast to me in the wilderness." But Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and besides, I will not let Israel go." Then they said, "The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Otherwise he will fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword." But the king of Egypt said to them, "Moses and Aaron, why do you draw the people away from their work? Get back to your labors." Again Pharaoh said, "Look, the people of the land are now many, and you would have them cease from their labors?" So the same day Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters over the people and their foremen, saying, "You are no longer to give the people straw to make brick as previously. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But the quota of bricks which they were making previously you shall impose on them. You are not to reduce any of it. Because they are lazy, therefore they cry out, 'Let us go and sacrifice to our God.' Let the labor be heavier on the men, and let them work at it so that they will pay no attention to false words." So the taskmasters of the people and their foremen went out and spoke to the people, saying, "Thus says Pharaoh, I am not going to give you any straw. You go and get straw for yourselves wherever you can find it, but none of your labor will be reduced." So the people scattered through all the land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. The taskmasters pressed them, saying, "Complete your work quota, your daily amount, just as when you had straw." Moreover, the foremen of the sons of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and were asked, "Why have you not completed your required amount either yesterday or today in making brick as previously?" Then the foreman of the sons of Israel came and cried out to Pharaoh, saying, "Why do you deal this way with your servants? There is no straw given to your servants, yet they keep saying to us, 'Make bricks,' and behold, your servants are being beaten, but it is the fault of your own people." But he said, "You are lazy, very lazy. Therefore you say, 'Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord.' So go now and work, for you will be given no straw, yet you must deliver the quota of bricks." The foremen of the sons of Israel saw that they were in trouble because they were told, "You must not reduce your daily amount of bricks." When they left Pharaoh's presence, they met Moses and Aaron as they were waiting for them. They said to them, "May the Lord look upon you and judge you, for you have made us odious in Pharaoh's sight and in the sight of his servants, to put a sword in their hand to kill us." Then Moses returned to the Lord and said, "O Lord, why have you brought harm to this people? Why did you ever send me? Ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done harm to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh, for under compulsion he will let them go, and under compulsion he will drive them out of his land."
Quite a story. Our Haftarah portion, the portion out of the prophets that was selected to go with this and has been selected for generations, is out of the book of Isaiah. Joy's going to read to us Isaiah 27, verse 6 to 28, 13. And then there's an additional reading out of chapter 29 for 2 verses, 22 and 23. Isaiah 27, 6.
It says, okay. In the days to come, Jacob will take root, Israel will blossom and sprout, and they will fill the whole world with fruit. Like the striking of him who has struck them, has he struck them? Or like the slaughter of his slain, have they been slain? You contended with them by banishing them, by driving them away. With his fierce wind he has expelled them on the day of the east wind. Therefore, through this Jacob's iniquity will be forgiven, and this will be the full price of the pardoning of his sin. When he makes all the altar stones like pulverized chalk stones, when Asherim and incense altars will not stand. For the fortified city is isolated, a homestead forlorn and forsaken like the desert. There the calf will graze, and there it will lie down and feed on its branches. When its limbs are dry, they are broken off. Women come and make a fire with them, for they are not a people of discernment. Therefore their Maker will not have compassion on them, and their Creator will not be gracious to them. In that day the Lord will start his threshing from the flowing stream of the Euphrates to the brook of Egypt, and you will be gathered up one by one, O sons of Israel. It will come about also in that day that a great trumpet is blown, and those who were perishing in the land of Assyria and who were scattered in the land of Egypt will come and worship the Lord in the holy mountain at Jerusalem. Woe to the proud crown of the drunkards of Ephraim, and to the fading glory of its glorious beauty, which is at the head of the fertile valley, of those who are overcome with wine. Behold, the Lord has a strong and mighty agent, as a storm of hail, a tempest of destruction, like a storm of mighty overflowing waters. He has cast it down to the earth with his hand. The proud crown of the drunkards of Ephraim is trodden underfoot, and the fading flower of its glorious beauty, which is at the head of the fertile valley, will be like the first ripe fig prior to summer, which one sees, and as soon as it is in his hand, he swallows it. In that day the Lord of hosts will become a beautiful crown and a glorious diadem to the remnant of his people, a spirit of justice for him who sits in judgment, a strength to those who repel the onslaught at the gate. And these also reel from wine and stagger from strong drink. The priest and the prophet reel with strong drink. They are confused by wine, they stagger from strong drink. They reel while having visions, they totter when rendering judgment, for the tables are full of filthy vomit, without a single clean place. To whom would he teach knowledge, and to whom would he interpret the message? Those just weaned from milk? Those just taken from the breast? For he says, order on order, order on order, line on line, line on line, a little here, a little there. Indeed, he will speak to his people through stammering lips and a foreign tongue. He who said to them, here is rest, give rest to the weary, and here is repose, but they would not listen. So the word of the Lord to them will be, order on order, order on order, line on line, line on line, a little here, a little there, that they may go and stumble backward, be broken, snared, and taken captive. Therefore thus says the Lord, who redeemed Abraham concerning the house of Jacob, Jacob shall not now be ashamed, nor shall his face turn pale, but when he sees his children, the work of my hands in his midst, they will sanctify my name. Indeed, they will sanctify the Holy One of Jacob, and will stand in awe of the God of Israel.
The apostolic writing that was chosen for today out of the Gospels, Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. Bob is going to read that for us today. Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12.
Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Gathering together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. Where the Messiah was to be born. They said to him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for this is what has been written by the prophets. And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah, for out of you shall come forth a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod secretly called the Magi and determined from them the exact time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the child, and when you have found him, report to me so that I may come and worship him. After hearing the king, they went their way, and the star which they had seen in the east went on before them until it came and stood over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. After coming into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell to the ground and worshipped. He then opened their treasures. Opening their treasures, they presented to him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned by God in a dream not to return to Herod, the Magi left for their own country by another way.
The second part of the Apostolic Writings selected for today came out of the book of Acts, the Acts of the Apostles. And I'm going to go ahead and read it. This is a portion of a sermon. Okay, it's a portion of a sermon by Stephen. Stephen was one of the disciples after the death and resurrection of Yeshua. He had been in a position, he was in Jerusalem, and he was part of the leadership of the early church. And he was called before the council because they didn't like what he had been teaching. And so he speaks to them. And he tells them a story. And that story comes right out of the readings that we had today. And I'm reading out of the book of Acts, chapter 7. I'm going to begin with verse 17. Why should I preach if Stephen can do it for me, right? As the time drew near for the fulfillment of the promise God had made to Abraham, the number of our people in Egypt increased greatly, until there arose another king over Egypt who had no knowledge of Joseph. With cruel cunning, this man forced our fathers to put their newborn babies outside their homes so that they would not survive. It was then that Moses, was born, and he was beautiful in God's sight. And for 3 months he was reared in his father's house. And when he was put out of his home, Pharaoh's daughter took him and brought him up as her own son. So Moses was trained in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and became both a powerful speaker and a man of action. But when he was 40 years old, the thought came to him to visit his brothers, the people of Israel. And on seeing one of them being mistreated, he went to his defense and took revenge by striking down the Egyptians. He supposed his brothers would understand that God was using him to rescue them. But they didn't understand. When he appeared the next day as they were fighting and tried to make peace between them by saying, "Men, you are brothers, why do you want to hurt each other?" the one who was mistreating his fellow pushed Moses away, said, "Who made you a ruler and a judge over us? Do you want to kill me the way you killed that Egyptian yesterday?" And on hearing this, Moses fled the country and became an exile in the land of Midian, where he had 2 sons. After 40 more years, an angel appeared to him in the desert near Mount Sinai in the flames of a burning thorn bush. When Moses saw this, he was amazed at the sight. And as he approached to get a better look, there came the voice of Adonai. "I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob." But Moses trembled with fear and did not dare to look. Adonai, the Lord, said to him, "Take off your sandals, because the place where you are standing is holy ground. I have clearly seen how my people have been being oppressed in Egypt. I have heard their cry, and I have come down to rescue them. And now I will send you to Egypt." This Moses, whom they rejected, saying, "Who made you a ruler and a judge?" is the very one whom God sent both as ruler and ransomer by means of the angel that appeared to him in the thorn bush. This man led them out, performing miracles and signs in Egypt, at the Red Sea, and the wilderness for 40 years. This is the Moses who said to the people of Israel, God will raise up a prophet like me from among your brothers. If we take our understanding of biblical study and our drive for exactness, getting it perfectly right, getting the story right, understanding all of it, when we read the way Stephen presents this, it reads a little different than we understood it as we read it out loud just a little bit ago. Because you see, Stephen isn't concerned about getting the story perfectly, accurately stated in this situation. He's not concerned that he kind of doesn't get it exactly the same way it supposedly happened when Moses was born and beautiful and he was raised for 3 months in his father's house. Moses was born and he was beautiful and his mother put him in a basket in the water, right? And the daughter of Pharaoh saw him then. And then he was brought back into the house. Stephen kind of simplifies it. Why? Because he's trying to get a message across. Sometimes we get locked down in details of the words in the stories. In the traditional understanding in the Jewish community of what happened at the bank of the river, we read in our translation says that Pharaoh's daughter sent her maid to get the child. It's a Jewish tradition and understanding, and it's taught in Jewish day schools, that Pharaoh's daughter sent out to get the child. It didn't say her maid necessarily. Sent out, stretched out. And there's this story that Pharaoh's daughter reached out, and as she reached out for this basket that had this baby, this basket floating in the reeds, that she stretched out and her arm extended. Any of you guys remember Go-Go Gadget? And he would stretch his arm, right? And it would just get longer and longer until it worked. That's kind of the story they tell. Did it happen? Not that way, really, no. But you see, the story is meant to give us an understanding. When Pharaoh's daughter reached out and took in this baby, she knew what this baby was. She knew her father had said, kill them all. She knew she was taking a risk. And she went beyond herself to take this child in, to raise this child. It's not so much that her arm literally did a stretching to reach the baby. It's that she stretched herself out to save the life of this child. She did something that would not have been expected, something beyond what she was supposed to do. And so Moses was rescued from certain death, floating on the Nile. She went beyond herself. As Stephen explains to us, we have this thing that happened. Moses was born, and he was raised, and Stephen says he was a strong speech and strong action. Wait a minute. When Moses stands in front of the burning bush, doesn't he say, I can't even talk right? That's what we understand. That's what it says. Moses told God at the burning bush, I can't do this. I can't talk right. But he'd had the training. Could he have developed some kind of a speech impediment in the time between when he tried to rescue the guys and when he met God at the bush, burning bush? I don't know. Joy loaned us a movie a while back to watch on one of our nights, The King's Speech. If you've never seen it, you ought to watch it. It's really an interesting story, a perspective of the King of England, literally, who was a stutterer, who had been abused, honestly, emotionally, in his family line as he was growing and he was being prepared. He wasn't supposed to be the next king. His older brother was. This is just the beginning of World War II. He wasn't supposed to be the next king. His brother was. But his brother was a playboy, and his brother didn't want to be king. And so his brother walked away and abdicated. And Queen Elizabeth, who is Queen of England now, her father was raised up and made king when he didn't want to be, because he couldn't talk. He stuttered. How was it treated? When you find your voice. When you learn that what you say matters. And when you know that someone will hear you. Moses was raised in the finest place. He decided it was time to go find out about his brothers, and he gets up and he goes out and he pays attention, right? He sees something happen that he didn't like, and he takes justice into his own hands. And he steps out and he kills an Egyptian to deliver his brothers. He goes out the next day and finds out they didn't appreciate it. They didn't accept him. Why not? Well, partly because, one, it wasn't God's time. Had God told him to go out and kill an Egyptian? It doesn't say he did. Had God told him it was time to deliver the people? It does not say that. We do know that God had promised way back, in the book of Genesis, chapter 15, when God made covenant with Abraham, God said to Abram, "Know this for certain, your descendants will be foreigners in a land that is not theirs. They will be slaves and held in oppression there 400 years. He even gives them a time frame. And I will judge that nation, the one that makes them slaves, and afterwards they will leave with many possessions." God told Abram this was going to happen. God gave him a timeline. I don't know that Moses had been trained in anything related to his faith, to his family's heritage. I don't know if he knew about that promise or not. But they did. And according to rabbinical tradition, so did the Egyptians. In fact, there's a story that says that Pharaoh had had a dream about these people, and in this dream, these people stole the wealth of Egypt and went out into the wilderness and left. And that was why he started being harder on them. Interesting story. I don't know. But we know he started being harder. We know that as the time came and as the time began to come for them to be delivered, as that time frame was coming up for them to be delivered, it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And they were treated worse and worse and worse. And when Moses saw the way they were being treated, and Moses probably knew a little bit of the story about he had been saved, but all these others had not. Moses tried to take it into his own hands, but it wasn't time. It wasn't time. God had not said. And so he flees. He goes out to Midian, and there he learns humility. There he takes care of sheep. Have you guys ever been around sheep? When I was growing up, in the summers, there were times that we as a group from our little church in Phoenix would go out to the reservation. We would go up to the Navajo reservation. We would go out to a couple different places, coal mine, copper mine, up to Tuba City. And we would do vacation Bible schools for these children. And it was a wonderful thing. And we would watch as they took care of the sheep. And we would see how stubborn sheep can be. How kind of dumb they actually are. You know, if you get a bunch of sheep, and we saw this in a canyon, the pastor that was leading us around told us, now be careful here, there's a drop-off into the canyon. If you go around this little fence that I put up, there's a sheer cliff. You can come over this way and you can stand and you can look down. Don't go around the fence on that path. When you go over here to the rock and you look down, what you're going to see is a pile of dead sheep. What? Which was why he put the fence on the path. Because the sheep came following the path. First one fell. Next one. None of them stopped until literally the shepherd was able to get up in the middle of them and push them back. And they were just following their leader. Following to their certain death. Just following their leader. Bonk. And they were all dying at the base of that cliff because they were sheep following their leader. And the pastor said, we put this fence up so we don't lose any more of our sheep. And I thought, years later, what a wonderful picture of us sometimes. Sheep are not smart. When Moses was out there taking care of the sheep, he had to learn all kinds of things about behavior. He'd been in the palace. He'd been in a place where he said something and it would be done for him probably. He was raised up as a son of Pharaoh's daughter, one of the family. He was raised with privilege. Now he was finding out what it was like to not have privilege. It's probably not fun. Probably got hungry, thirsty, tired, all of that. But he learned humility. And then God said, now it's time to go back. So you would think he's going back. It's going to get better, right? Right? The Messiah's here. It's going to get better. The Redeemer's here. The one that God said would come and deliver. God said he'd deliver, so the Redeemer's here. It's going to get better. It got worse. Again. And when it got worse, the people rejected Moses again. When it got worse, just as the Redeemer was there, they rejected Moses again. And that's the point that Stephen makes. He says, God said he'd bring a Redeemer. God said he'd bring a Redeemer. He brought Moses. God said he was going to bring another one after Moses, and he would be a full Redeemer. He promised it. He said it was going to happen. When we read in Isaiah, the promise that Jacob will no longer be ashamed, the promise that they will be taught, they can be taught, they will be taken out into exile, but when they come back, the Redeemer will come. Well, they'd been in exile, they'd come back, and they're waiting for this Redeemer, right? Lots of ideas about what he was going to look like. Lots of ideas of how he was going to throw Rome off. Lots of ideas about what this Redeemer was going to be like. And Jesus came, and he began to teach them about the inner man, about the law and its application within. And he told them, don't wear your tzitzits down onto the ground, dragging to show how powerful of a prayer person you are. Don't make your phylacteries so big that everybody knows you're standing on the street corner and you're praying, and man, you look holy and righteous. He said, don't do that. Quit making yourself people you're not. Get right before God with your heart. He said to them, you've made all these laws and all these fences around Torah, like putting a fence across the path so they wouldn't fall off. They had put fences around Torah so the people wouldn't fall off into sin. But they'd made them so far out and so much and so difficult. And Jesus said to them, but you didn't deal with the issue. The issue is not here. The issue is here. The issue is in the heart. If you want to read the first place where it talks about having a circumcised heart, having your heart circumcised before God, if you want to read the first place where the new covenant is promised and talked about, you're going to go to Jeremiah. Circumcise your hearts. And Yeshua came, Jesus came, and he began teaching that. He said, you know, the sin isn't committed just by the act. It's committed before that. It's committed in your heart. If you look at your brother and you hate him, you've murdered him already in your heart. Deal with that hate. Deal with the hate. Deal with the anger. Deal with the heart. And the actions will adjust and will take care of themselves. But they didn't like it, did they? And they said, who made you a judge and a ruler over us? You're not king material. You're not killing the Romans. You're not driving us to freedom. You're not, how dare you tell us how to interpret the law? How dare you tell us that we're sinners? That was the leadership. Many, many, many who were not raised and trained in the seminaries of that day, in Jerusalem, in Judea. Those who did not go through all of that training. Those who read the word for themselves in other ways. Those who were out and saw that God is God. Those who listened to him. And some who had studied it saw him. But they rejected him. You know, Moses came and he said, I'm here to deliver you guys. He came the first time trying to deliver them, and who made you a judge and a ruler over us? How dare you kill an Egyptian? You're going to get us in trouble, buddy. You know. He came back again, and they rejoiced, but it didn't look like what they thought it was going to look like. Pharaoh said no, and Pharaoh made it harder for them, and then they rejected him again. I think it's a great picture of Yeshua, isn't it? He didn't look like what they wanted. It didn't work out the way they wanted. But here's the truth, full truth. He did everything his father asked him to do. Everything. Including praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. And he died. A horrible death. But he didn't stay dead. He was resurrected. And guess what? He's coming back. He's coming back. But just like the Egyptians mistreated people of Israel, and just before the deliverer was to come, things got hard. Things got worse. And they got worse. And they got worse. And they got worse. I have a lot of friends who firmly believe, strongly believe, in a concept that was taught beginning with John Darby a long time ago, called the rapture. I've seen many people just this last week, because things didn't happen the way they wanted them to, as they watched the news, as they watched what happened in Washington, D.C., as it didn't happen the way they wanted to. I've seen many people say, I'm just waiting for God to come. I'm waiting for the rapture. I'm just going to sit here and wait for the rapture so God can take us out of here. The rapture's coming, and it'll be all okay, because I'll be in heaven when this earth goes to pot. I wish I could believe in that still. But here's the thing, whether you believe in a rapture or not, Jesus never said we could sit back with an idea that says, I'm going to get out of here. He never said that. He did say it was going to get worse. He did say it was going to get worse. He said, in this world you will have tribulation. But I've overcome the world. And in me you will have peace. See, I think, honestly, just like at the time of the tribulation of Israel in Egypt, the trouble that they were facing, as it got harder and harder and harder, and they got their eyes off the promise of God, they kept their eyes on the circumstances, and they began to grumble and complain, and they said, Moses, get out of here, you made it worse. Let's be careful not to do that. Let's be careful to say, God, you promised. God, you promised. God, you promised. God, you promised. God, I'm holding you to the promise. It's getting worse, but I'm holding you to the promise. It's getting worse, but I'm holding on to the promise. It's getting worse, but I'm holding on to the promise. I will not take my eyes off the promise. The Redeemer, the one who came and is to come. I will not take my eyes off the one who is the cornerstone of our faith. Even if it gets worse. Even if it gets harder. I'm not taking my eyes off him. I'm not going to stop obeying him. I'm not going to stop serving my neighbors, walking in love, doing good to those around me, especially those of the household of faith, even if I don't agree with their doctrines. Guess what? I'm still going to be nice and kind to people who believe in the rapture. I'm still going to be nice and kind to people who don't understand that Sabbath is the Lord's day, not Sunday. I'm still going to be nice and kind and loving, and I'm still going to help. And I'm still going to step and walk in love. Why? Because God said they'll know you by your love. How you love each other, not by how you argue theology. And I can argue with the best of them. And some of you have seen me do it. But if we have not shown love first, why should they listen to the rest? There's a saying in recovery circles. If I don't know that you care, I don't care what you know. If I don't know that you care, I don't care what you know. I think we need to carry that over into the church sometimes. The followers of Messiah. If they don't know that we care, they're not going to hear what we know. And if we get off on all the tangents and forget that our command is to fix our eyes on him, the author and finisher of our faith, if we forget and we get involved in everything else, we will have failed him. He's our master and he's coming. Will he find us faithful? Will he find us faithful? I'm going to sing a song. It's called Cornerstone. And I was going to do it before the reading, but things are off, right?
It's locked out, so I can't pull anything out.
Get locked out? I think the password is 5628. You can try it. And it's a simple song. And it's my hope and my prayer for everyone. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust in Jesus' name. strong in the Savior's love through the storm. He's Lord, Lord of all. When he shall come with trumpet sound, oh, may I then in him be found, dressed in his righteousness alone, fall blessed to stand before the throne. Christ alone, cornerstone, we made strong in the Savior's love through the storm. He is Lord, Lord of all. Christ alone, cornerstone, we made strong in the Savior's love through the storm. He is Lord, Lord of all. Through the storm, He is Lord. Through the storm, He is Lord. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of all. And He is faithful who promised. Jay, would you come?
Yes. A little testimony about that song. So, the last spring concert that I ever put on at a school was at a Christian school up in Bend, and it was a pretty hip school. They had a really cool way of marketing their school to have people want to come to it. And just, it was a Bend, and it was typical of Bend, and it was a hip school. Let's just say the truth of it. And I felt like that song was supposed to be the culminating song. And I was the head music teacher, and there were two others that worked with me, both of whom had been at the school about 30 years. One of them was the founder, and she helped teach piano, and the other one was a fabulous guitarist. Well, he'd been there about 20 years. So they were the long timers, and so I had a lot of authority with them on my side, you know. And so the principal said, well, is that a good ender for a concert? And the other two said, oh, yes, yes, we're lifting up the cornerstone, you know, Jesus. Yes, it's going to be great. He says, but it doesn't have a pop. It's not exciting. And and they assured him that that was the song. That was the song. It was so moving. It was just so moving. And if, now I'm going to cry. If I never ever get to be a music teacher again, I'll know that my last spring concert had the right ending song. Yep. What am I doing? Okay. Shall we stand, please?
Did you need this?
Perhaps. I think I know it even.
I think you know it. You should know it.
Yivarech Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai penav lecha v'yichunecha. Yisod Adonai penav lecha v'yasem lecha shalom, shalom. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. The Lord bless you.
The Lord bless you
And keep you.
and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you. The Lord bless you. And keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you. And be gracious unto you. And be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, hey, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, hey. Friday, 6:30. We will be learning about the next month. We're finishing Tevet on Wednesday and beginning Shabbat. So anyway, that's Friday night.
The Lord bless you.
The Lord bless you
And keep you.
and keep you.
The Lord
Make His face to shine upon you. The Lord bless you.
The Lord bless you.
And keep you.
And keep you.
The Lord make His face to shine upon you. And be gracious